Hello and welcome to the Securosis Firestarter. Today is it's what October 19th, I believe. How could I forget that? It's the day Star Wars tickets go on sale. This is Rich Mogul, and we have not been around for a little while. We just been, I'll be honest, we've just been really, really busy, and it's hard to get even two of us in the same physical location. So, joining me as always, let's start with Adrian Lane in the echoey room that has better bandwidth than the non-echoey room.
Yeah, I'm Echo guy, but at least I'm not, scheduling my entire life around Star Wars tickets. So there is that.
I'm not scheduling my entire life, just part of my life and most of my family's. And then also here, as always, is Mike Rothman.
Hello. Actually, it turns out that was a little bit of a misnomer, Rich. We're not in the same physical location. We're just in a location where we can actually do a fire starter at the same time,
Yeah,
which
okay.
is actually seemingly more complicated. We seem to have been co-located at least 4 or 5 times over the last period of time between our fire starters. So things have been challenging but good, right? Cyber all the things, and if stuff wasn't as good, we wouldn't be as busy. So we're not about to bitch about it, but obviously we wanted to make sure we got one in at least for the fall.
Yep, yeah. We'd apologize for not blogging as most or not doing this as much, but the truth is we're not going to apologize for keeping our families fed and our kids spoiled, or kids and dogs spoiled. And with that, and Mike, I didn't even pick up on that. We actually have been more physically together than we've been apart, but at our computers where we could record something. The most recent of that was what was that? Almost 2 weeks ago. We were at Amazon reInvent. So it was the third year I went. It was the second year for you guys. And what'd you think?
You know, it was still exciting and novel for me, right? Because for a couple of reasons, right? One is that for me, a lot of security shows are as much a high school reunion as anything else. So it was actually nice to be able to walk around the show floor and not get kind of accosted by all sorts of people that are either trying to sell me stuff, pitch me on something, or just old friends that I hadn't seen in a while. So being able to be pseudo anonymous at a conference was actually quite nice. But it was a little different than I think last year, which was my first experience there, because it was so novel to be in a place without everybody in black T-shirts, with everybody kind of grumbly, folks that were willing to talk to you about what they were doing. That's something that we really don't get at security conferences for the most part. So it was, but it felt a lot more real this year. I don't know, guys. Maybe it was just me, but last year it was like all new and shiny and novel, and this year it felt very crowded. It felt, kind of out of control. I'm not sure what else you could do from a traffic and flow management of the people there, because they doubled the size of the conference between this year and last year, and it just felt kind of like everything else relative to cloud. It's happening faster than we thought, happening in ways we can't, imagine. All sorts of stuff going on, hard to keep track of, and that really kind of summarized my week there. It was just there seemed to be a lot of stuff going on, and most of the time I'm like, what the hell just happened to me? And that was, I guess that was kind of how I would sum up the week.
Well, I think last year there was a lot of excitement and a lot of cool new stuff. This year it felt like everybody was doing something. They were building something. They were engaged in technical aspects, very different. And it's not just us security guys going there and seeing plaid shirts instead of black T-shirts, or enthusiasm instead of angst. But I think that really sums up the week, is just the sheer. 25 years ago, I've been in development, and I have never seen a conference where people are that excited about developing stuff and the new stuff that's happening and what they could do with cloud. I'm just shocked that you've got 19,000 people and they're all racing to go to the sessions. They're skipping out on keynotes to get in line to the sessions because they want to make sure they get a seat to learn about queuing theory.
And the keynotes suck, but
yeah, there was that.
Yeah.
What's wrong with the sales pitch from BMW?
Yeah, that was a lot out of place there. So,
but I think from our standpoint, this transition towards cloud and how this is really going to reverberate across everything that we know from an infrastructure standpoint, obviously from a security standpoint. Rich, I think you did actually a real good job of summarizing that in last week's Friday summary about the fact that, listen, I was fortunate, right? I grew up a developer. I kind of, shooed that away, once I got into the real world and went down the networking and security path. But obviously, I do have a background as a developer, and I do understand at least some logic things. But I think, at this point in time, all of us have to start thinking like developers. Again, regardless of whether you're a sysadmin, regardless of whether you do networks or provision, infrastructure within a data center, or actually do applications. Again, I think that was a really good summary about how our job responsibilities are changing as this cloud thing continues to become more and more real every day.
Yeah, look, I mean, there are going to be people who still have to maintain the pipes and physically keep those pieces together. And there's people that are still going to have to play at the traditional layers of networking and such. But what we see as we transition into cloud, those skill sets consolidate. And they consolidate predominantly within cloud providers. And yes, it's going to be a long, long time before everybody shuts down all their data centers. But I had a conversation with one big company, at that conference, and they said, we're not telling anybody, but we're pretty sure we're going to get all the data centers shut down by 2020. And that's the internal goal, whether or not they can do it or not, and move the rest up into cloud providers. And I realize there's people listening to this shaking their heads, but I have described this as a 20-year global data center transformation project. I started using that terminology about 4+ years ago. And we're not 4 years into it, even though it's 4 years later when I started that. I don't know, maybe we are. I think we're well down that path. I mean, the biggest changes for me were that first year, Adrian, that enthusiasm with the developers. I mean, that's why you guys remember, I went there, I got invited as an analyst that first year, and I came home and I told you guys, I'm like, you have to go next year. I mean, just full stop without question, you need to go to this event next year. And then we all went last year, and we even paid for our tickets, which we don't do for any other conference. And that developer enthusiasm was there the first year. The difference this year is that developer enthusiasm was in Fortune 100 companies, and they had a lot of representatives there, and they were in industries like financial services. I mean, multiple conversations with financial services and manufacturing and healthcare and others of massive scale companies that we know are moving in. And maybe it's not all to Amazon, some of it's to Azure, but I mean, that was huge. And so we look at the technologies, and we look at the kinds of companies adopting, and we look at their plans. I think within 15 years, the world is going to look tremendously different. And depending on where you are within, your career path, what does that mean for your skill set? If you don't, look, we get to cheat. All three of us are formally trained as software developers. We all have programmer experience in our backgrounds of varying degrees. I think both of you have it as part of your degrees. Mine was a little different.
Not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah. And so, as part of that, it's mentally a bit easier transition, but, we are moving into a software-defined everything world. Anything that most security practitioners are going to do is going to be involved in a software-defined environment, and where the networks and everything else. And the way those things operate, the way they look, the way they work, the way you manage them, lots of times we throw in an abstraction layer on top to make it look like what we're used to, but it's like anything. Once you dig deep low enough, you realize that's not that's not the same thing. It's like the first versions of the iPhone calendars that had like the leather stitching that Steve Jobs wanted on there to make it look like your old physical calendar, and sheets would tear off. That was a transition tool to get people used to being comfortable with an completely electronic device, digital device, replacing that physical device. And now we're doing similar things where we're making our networks kind of look the same and making, and you don't get the full benefits out of that until you realize, the true differences, and you would move into this software developed everything environment, and you realize that we have to rely more on developers than normal packet crunchers.
Right, and I think the point is, in some way, shape, or form, we're all maybe not necessarily production software developers, but we have to understand logic, we have to understand scripting, we have to understand, kind of a lot of the ways that, again, code works, and code is going to drive a lot of these things. And I think, from my standpoint, what the really important takeaway is, is that you have to really throw away everything that you need or that we've had, right? You have to throw away everything that we've had. We have to design relative to, if I was starting over from scratch, what would it look like, right? Because we don't have limitations based upon physical realities like we used to in our old data center world. And again, that doesn't mean that we get to that, kind of fully baked, fully virtualized thing anytime soon. There's obviously going to be a phased approach to get from point A to point B. But if you just think about terms in terms of how do I get there, you really do underserve the leverage and the power of this software-defined everything concept. So again, I think that, and at least a lot of the work that we've been doing with some of our larger end user clients has been really focused around, getting them to step outside of what they think traditional architecture looks like, and really start thinking about what this could be. And obviously then you go back in and retrofit relative to the reality of legacy data connections, kind of moving data all over the place, which may or may not be as practical as it can be. So again, there's a lot of reality that makes that into a 10 to 15 year build as opposed to a 3-year revolution. But if you're not thinking in terms of, if I were going to blow the whole damn thing up and make it into a revolution, what would that look like? Then again, I think you're underserving the power of the architecture.
Automation and orchestration, right? How long have we been talking at Securosis here about React better and React faster? Now we can freaking do it. I was asked at the conference what I thought the biggest change in security was going to be over the next 5 years, and in terms of cloud, it's going to be DevOps. And it allows us to integrate security and integrate automation and orchestration into the process itself. And so when I went to reInvent and saw a company like Johnson & Johnson re-architecting applications and doing not just automated builds, but continuous integration, testing of their products, and getting to the point where they're going to be close to automated deployments, that's groundbreaking to see an old school big company like that be able to do that, and with a relatively small team too.
Yeah, they said they were when they were on stage moving 60% of their workloads to Amazon. That's their objective right now. And look, so one of the things I tweeted last week is you need to get yourself to a non-security conference. Look at your schedule for people who get to go to conferences. We know not everybody does. Can you get to a DevOps event? There's tons of them locally. Can you get to Amazon or Microsoft's conferences? I don't think Google's got one yet, but one of the more leading edge cloud providers that we know is going to survive all of this turmoil. Because this stuff's happening for real. We're not, this isn't actually analyst BS, which it probably sounds like to some degree. We're working with clients. There's public people talking about the changes they make, and that mental transition from traditional architectures to moving in the software-defined world. For example, Shannon over at Intuit runs their security team over there for dealing with all of their cloud stuff. Talks a lot about blast radius, doing things like set up and we've been advising people to do this for a while. Set up individual Amazon accounts for every little thing you do, because if something bad happens, it's all contained within that account, as opposed to a lot of people I work with, the first step they try is build this hybrid cloud kind of environment to connect their existing network up with Amazon, and all they're doing is increasing the blast radius and actually lowering the compartmentalization that the cloud can provide. But there's a whole another layer of problems that comes on top of that, which is, as Adrian got to, is the automation and the management of managing all of those environments, which I do agree our tool sets are behind the curve on it. Anyway, we're running out of time here because I know Mike's got a thing at the top of the hour. At some point, I actually need to be productive today because it'd be nice for a change. And I know Adrian's got some meetings as well. So any last comments, guys, or should we go ahead and shut this one down?
No, I think that if you're paying attention, you can see the future, and it looks a hell of a lot different than what we're used to today. And those that are afraid of it are destined to be the front-end processor maintainers of the internet age, and those that can get on top of it really do have just a tremendous amount of opportunity moving forward. Because again, once folks get a taste of this, and we started to see, you guys mentioned, right, Intuit, J&J, there were a number of folks that did pretty high-profile sessions at Amazon reInvent about how they're totally re-architecting their business around these cloud concepts, and doing so in a way that again, in a pretty highly regulated environment, is acceptable to the people that are kind of overseeing a lot of their regulatory issues. So, again, ignore this stuff at your own risk. And as Rich says, get to one of these shows, because I think it will be eye-opening for security folks to go and see not just the excitement, but the amount of things that are actually now real that are happening. And if you're not seeing it in your own environment, you will soon, and that means you need to be ready.
Yep. All right. Well, we've got to finish things up here. So thanks everyone. I can't tell you exactly when we'll be back. We're doing these on a space availability schedule, and I think next week's not on that list. Looking at the travel calendars, mostly for Mike. Let's just blame it all on Mike.
It's all Mike's fault.
Yeah. So all right, and everybody have a great week or rest of your week, depending on when we're actually able to get this thing edited and posted. We'll talk to you later.